Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in our first CPO webinar for our webinar series 2025. We're really grateful for your time, and we promise to make the next 1 hour very exciting and useful for each and every one of you. CPO trends and agenda for 2025 is a very important topic given all the volatility that's happening all over the world. I'm very happy to be joined by my fellow expert co-presenters, Dr. Marcell Vollmer, former head of procurement and head of digitalization for SAP worldwide, and a great expert on procurement across both sides of the Atlantic, and by Sunil Albal, senior principal Transformation X and a deep procurement and transformation expert. And I'm Arun Bruce, the founder and CEO of Transformation X. I've been doing procurement for most of my life. Thank you so much for your time. And without much ado, I will hand it over to my colleague Marcell to walk you through the first section, which is on the key trends impacting procurement worldwide today. Over to you, Marcell.
Awesome. Many thanks, Arun. And also, good morning, good afternoon from my end. It's really great being here today, and hopefully we will have an engaging session by sharing some of the links. The key trends, that's the section I will focus on, followed by Sunil on AI and procurement. And then, of course, with Arun, we will also see how we really can become more resilient. Okay, let's go right into the external factors. What are the trends reshaping procurement right now? And I think it makes sense to differentiate between external and internal. The external ones you see here broadcasted, the geopolitical uncertainty, the inflation or stagnation with inflation, stagflation combined, ESG relevance or irrelevance right now, the tariffs war, the trade routes, what we have, and new materials and services we see. And we will talk about each of them in a minute. But there are also internal ones. And as a former chief procurement officer, I've seen it by myself. The digitalization, digital transformation is a topic which is still going on. It is not at the level where we would hoped it, but artificial intelligence is helping us here and also helping us to ensure that we can work with the invisible procurement teams. I will elaborate on that. The people and data, which is key to drive really here the next level. And of course, generative AI from the hype to value. This is what we want to cover. And as mentioned, and on the AI piece, we go really deep and also show you, Arun will take on this, a little bit more insights about what does it mean in procurement right now. So let's start here with the first, the geopolitical uncertainty. When you look at the global map, what is broadcasted right now, I think there's not so much to say about what we have heard about the Panama Canal. Right now, we have seen the issues at the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, where we see certain Iran and US tension, which is heating up right now, but also on the Asian side, the Strait of Malacca. Is an area where we see we have impact and we have also issues by really securing our supply chains and make supply chains more resilient. 50% of the global trade is going through the 4 highlighted areas, what you see here, and they are currently under stress for different reasons. This is something what we have experienced. The pandemic is not long ago, where we have also seen how important supply chains are. Therefore, it is very important also, how can we get more certainty into the acquisition of goods and, of course, of services, and therefore trade policies. What you see on the next slide is very important for all of us. We have seen here what it means if a trade war starts, United States and China, it's highlighted here in the slide. It's not the only conflict what we see here. And we go back to 2016 until today, and you see there's different uncertainties also in that areas. There's key negative triggers what we see for the GDP growth of the different countries, the impacted countries. US and China, only 2 of them. I'm a German, as you might hear from my strong accent. Sorry for that. And we see there's direct impact also on the GDP. A conflict escalation definitely has impact from 0.5% if it's really a global financial crisis where the conditions are tightening. We even have up to minus 1.5% impact on the GDP, which is quite significant. Therefore, we need to think about how to really manage the volatility. And on the next slide, you see some events you might have all seen: the dot-com bust, the war in Afghanistan, subprime crisis, COVID, the Russian-Ukraine war. And you still see the up and down on the volatility, and we need to see on the supply chain side, how do we really cope with the external impact, what we see here on the political, on the economic side. And of course, no one knows what's coming next and how we will move on. 2025, the year we are in right now, but also 26, where we hopefully have a positive trend here changing. When you look on the geopolitical drivers, there's currently a change what we can see. And we have prepared here an overview, what's happening from the trade perspective. The trade flows is what you see here in green if it's growing, and in red if it's declining. It's not a big surprise. Russia, EU, it's currently going down. The same for United States and China. But there's also a lot of positive development. When you look, for example, United States, Europe is growing, China to the Asian countries is growing, Middle East is growing, as well as also India. And the green ones are those where you really see the growth in the next years. This is a projection what we have here prepared for you. The change until 2033, so basically the next 8 years out, where we see the impact what we have right now, and also what are the drivers on the political side. Still only a projection based on what we know, and we know there's a lot what we can't know right now. There's a lot also what might happen in between, but basically it helps us also when we define our supply chains, when we define where do we get our goods from, do we have alternative suppliers? This is exactly what we need to consider to ensure that we take the right decisions to help our business to grow, to focus on the right quality, in-time delivery, and of course, the right price. The golden triangle from procurement, probably all of you have heard about it. It's difficult to optimize everything. But basically, we can use the information what we have to ensure that we can really leverage it, and also then take a concept where we balance the supply chain and the right suppliers here globally. We have also some changes when we look now on the regulatory side. And it is not a big surprise for you that ESG, environmental, social, government regulation is currently under stress. The Trump administration has moved away from the Paris Agreement, so the CO2 reduction, what was committed between most of the countries. We see by that also changes here on the regulatory side, not only in the United States. I think there's a significant change also on the political direction, but we see also in Europe that there's a slowdown also now on the execution of the regulatory requirements, up to the point that regulation is going to change, stretched a little bit, but on the other side also where it's a discussion about, are we really looking at the right criteria, and do we define the targets in that way? We need to react on that, and we need also to ensure that we are compliant with the internal guidelines and rules we have given for our own companies. And this is currently in discussion, of course, where we think about what is the right effort we should put into this topic right now. Another element is also the new materials and services. Let me elaborate a little bit more on that. I think we all have heard about the rare earth metals and currently the unbalanced supply side. What we see right now, lots of these rare earth metals are coming from China. and also from some other regions in the world. And therefore, a supply chain stress definitely could also impact how we can procure these goods in the future. We see also a heavy investment on the data center side due to the increase in the critical infrastructure and cloud. But it's also the cybersecurity, which is concerning all of us, our IT departments for sure, as we see currently that we need to ensure that we have a secure data center and also continue the expansion of the data center. AI is one good example we will talk a little bit later around. And the new AI-powered software is eating up a lot of bandwidth in the internet, but also on the data center side. You might have heard about ChatGPT. It takes a significant consumption of energy. I think it's still not fully disclosed how much energy is really used for that and how much computing power do you really need for all of that. And there's still, with DeepSeek and other players in that market, a lot in the play right now, where we see it is tremendously impacting also the power what we need. Finally, it's also the personal protection equipment products we need around the world. And yeah, I think we can go to the next slide to really now conclude the digital disruption. And basically, we are coming now from the external factors we just discussed to the internal ones. When we look now to what do we do on the procurement side within our organizations? How do we combine technology on the top left with the human side, us as humans? Basically, it's a fair statement to say that the company of the future is bionic or will become bionic. And what does it mean? Basically, bionic means that we integrate the technology with us on the human side, meaning that we can leverage the power and really from the starting point on the left side of the slide, what you see, the humans we have, all of us, the technology we are using, to more or less on the usage of our processes end to end, but we focus on the outcomes. We will look into a new way of collaboration. We have all experienced home office, virtual meetings, a webinar like this one, providing the opportunity to connect with hundreds of you. Right now, I'm here in Germany. Right now, others are in different parts in the Middle East, in the world. This is daily business right now, and basically we are all used to it. It's also a very cost-efficient way to do it. It's a new way of working, and it is also leveraging the capabilities on the digital side what we have. AI is really going to the next level, helping us with that and bringing us to a bionic enterprise. When we look into the procurement teams, and all of you know how to run procurement, or basically those of you procurement enthusiasts like I am, since I started really going from shared services into an execution procurement role, we see that we have a lot of teams working for us. On the strategic sourcing side, I always say source to pay, the core process starts with the strategic side. The transactional procurement, we need to have the data available, research, analytics, and of course, what is key, the relationships. Our relations, not only within our teams, but also with, in most companies, the largest stakeholder management, what we have with all the suppliers we are doing business with. This is the setup, all done in-house, what we have seen in the past. Today we see, there's a little bit more getting outsourced. On the transactional side, P2P shared services are good examples for that, but also buying research, getting analysis to really understand what's going on right now and how we can really ensure we get the data, we get access. How many ships do we send through the Suez Canal? What does it mean if one ship gets stuck, like the Evergreen some years back, where we have seen, the entire supply chain between Asia and Europe can come to a standstill. This is something where we need to mitigate, but we need also to have the data to ensure that we get our goods, what we need to keep our production running. In the future, we will see a shift. Of course, the critical in-house sourcing, the strategic side will still continue and will be done in-house. Relationships, absolutely key, probably even more time is needed on that. But in the future, we will also leverage more capabilities on the AI side and also might leverage more outsourced capabilities. By that, what you see here is we need to focus on multiple key areas now to build resilience. And it starts with the government. I mentioned the organizational shift is also a new way on leadership, what it means. The roles, what we define, managing outsourced providers, managing also external sources, managing AI is something everyone by now might have experienced, ChatGPT or something else. And you have seen, okay, you can use it. It might have great examples, but you need also to manage it. You need to ensure which level of trust do you give into the systems by sharing confidential information. You need to establish a process. You need also to decide which technology is it, which generative AI technology do you want to use for your business, and this is something what we need to change. It's fair to say, and this is my concluding slide on this section on the trends, the future of procurement is powered by data and generative AI. But it's still driven by the people. All of us basically focusing on how to bring together the technology, the AI capabilities, the data we have access to with us as the humans. And this is, by the way, then, again, a definition of what bionic means. And hopefully we all become a bionic company with us as humans, as a key players really taking the decisions and managing the source to pay process end to end. Thank you very much, and happy to answer questions and also go a little bit deeper. Oh, wow, the first question is coming up. So for those of you joining, Arun, do you want to?
No, please, that's a great start, Marcell, and please go ahead. Thanks, Tess, for asking that first question. Your question is, how do you balance benefits of economies of scale, which point towards larger suppliers, of course, and diversifying your suppliers? So great question and a key dilemma that CPOs constantly face. So over to you, Marcell, to share your thoughts, and happy to follow up.
Thanks, Arun, and Tess, really, really great question. I think this is exactly the golden question and what we in procurement need to master. Because on the one side, economies of scale mean we bundle as much as possible. Ideally, all the volume goes to one supplier. But on the other side, when you look on the diversification and also the risk assessment to ensure your business continuity, what you are asking, probably it is not the best approach to do it. And that's the reason in automotive we have seen how it works. There's one dominant supplier, probably 60, 70, sometimes more percent for certain products. And there's another one as a backup with a lower volume and sometimes even a third one. And I think this is exactly what we need to define, how to balance that with the aspect of risk. We see the global supply chain can get interrupted very quickly. And by that, we need to balance it. I think it is always an individual decision how to make it. The difference is between direct and indirect material. Of course, indirect material might be easier to mitigate. On the direct material side, sometimes there's long R&D processes in place, which are tightly integrated also on the production side. This is something what needs to be done with the strategic category management and the planning here for the future. Yeah, I wish I would have a very clear answer. That's how you need to do it. It's a little bit more tricky on that, but the balance and really now also thinking about the risk mitigation is definitely key. What I see when I talk to CPOs, CFOs, operations heads, and CEOs around the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcell. And if I may add, that's a great question, Tess. Thanks for asking. It comes down to how you think about insurance as a concept, right? So the right question to ask, or the related question, is, what is the impact on the company if your biggest supplier fails you? And then the related question would be, okay, if then therefore I pay 1% more for the second supplier who may not be as efficient as the first, but who is ready to pick up in case my first supplier actually fails, is that 1% fair, or is that too much? So quantifying it helps manage the narrative very tightly. and create the trade-offs for senior management to decide. We have another question there. So how mature are organizations, purchasing departments when assessing shift to invisible procurement teams? And great. So we'll talk about that as we go through the next topic, actually, Habib. We have exactly that topic, which is AI in procurement, and how can procurement teams add great value while actually being behind the scenes or almost invisible. And Wael has another question on resilience. We'll also pick that up because that is exactly where we'll spend 10, 15 minutes of our time. So without much ado, I will pull in our next speaker, Sunil, who is a senior procurement expert, tons of procurement transformation under his belt across geographies. Over to you, Sunil. Can we have the presentation?
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Marcell. A pleasure to be here. While the slides are coming up, Marcell spoke about AI and how digital can make a difference. So is AI just a hype, or does AI really create value? Now, if you look at the shareholder returns for last 3 years for S&P 1200 index companies, and the maximum return is by companies who have been implementing AI at scale, be it Google, be it Amazon, or Facebook, and so on and so forth. They're closely followed by others who have started adopting AI, and it is very clearly visible that companies embracing AI definitely see benefits, and this reflects in the value that they create. Now, this is at a company level. What does this mean for procurement per se? And if you go to the next slide, in procurement, use cases for traditional AI and other RPA solutions have mostly been around automation, which have been for transactional activities. They primarily fall in the B2B side, with examples including basic spend analysis, RPAs, for PO follow-ups, and OCR and these the procurement teams enable the capabilities for strategic procurement, such as help in supplier identification, generating. This will help
and to continue where
release almost 90% of the time taken by procurement. Let them focus on more strategic activities, be it analyzing data, trend, and risks, spending more time with the suppliers, and building supplier relationship management, category management. And slide. Now, 90% does sound like a lot. And to make it more practical for the audience, let me walk you to 3 live examples where we actually saw these efficiencies. So it's not a theoretical number that we're coming up with, but an actual example of 3 cases where we saw some of these efficiencies. Let me start off with the first one on the left, which is supplier search. Now today, without AI, it takes almost a day to create an exhaustive list of suppliers by looking at old POs or data internally within the organization, doing a lot of internet research and Google to understand who are the suppliers out there, creating an exhaustive list, checking credentials through websites or calls, and then prioritizing them. Now, if you have an AI tool that is geared towards market research, the research can help identify, prioritize, and validate suppliers through using the GenAI tool. You can also use the AI tool to analyze some of the internal spend and the PO data to extract details of all the past suppliers from data that is there internally. Now, this reduces time spent in this activity from a day to maybe just an hour. Now, similarly, if you look at price benchmarking, a day would be spent to gather price benchmarks, looking at internet and various websites. That is what we usually do, or speaking to vendors or people we know in the industry to understand what the prices for certain commodities or certain components are. Creating a priority list based on the prices received, and then looking through the entire price list to create that kind of a benchmark. Today, AI tools can search and rank prices across the internet within minutes. I mean, that just saves up a lot of time of Another notable example, which I mentioned earlier as well, is document creation, whether it's RFPs, RFQs, or contracts. What would take about a day and a half to create an RFP, basis, referring older RFPs, older documents, and create a new refined document, and then, we'll go through it to prioritize it. Let's look at an AI tool which can actually create the first draft for you basis the past documents and allow you to spend time refining it and adding value to it basis your experience. And what you see on the screen now are actual examples and prompts being used to achieve this efficiency. So this is what you observed live. This is not based on past on theoretical examples. Now we at Transformation X, on the next slide, what you see, have also developed a Gen AI based tool called Procure Copilot.
And if I may add in there, I think we're
Where
having
the
some
tool can
network
crawl
issues.
internet and use other AI tools, specific market research by product type and geography within minutes. Yeah. Sorry, I think there was a lag there. Am I audible?
Yes, audible now. Please go on, Sunil. Sorry, I think we're having some network challenges there. But just to continue where Sunil was talking about, what you see on screen now is a screenshot of our latest Gen AI Procure Copilot product developed by Transformation X. And it's a very exciting space. And what you see here, though the font may seem a little bit small, is from left to right from RFP creation, and prior to that, even market research, spend analysis, and to comparing of proposals. This tool actually ensures that a lot of that is done. If you go to the next slide, please. It's meant to be very easy to use. And most importantly, it's also meant to be safe, because the biggest challenge with ChatGPT and sort of the open source LLMs is really a question on cybersecurity and whether the data you upload is actually safe, or is it being used to train the model and can actually be leaked to the external internet. What we ensure is that that doesn't happen. So that's one big advantage. So as you think about leveraging AI in your day-to-day procurement, we would say sort of, have a very high bar and think sky high, if you will, because the power of AI in market research, as you can see from this example, is huge. You can identify new suppliers, you can get the latest prices for commonly used products, etc. So you're actually quite advanced as against traditionally just checking your own spend. If you go to the next slide, please. Creation of RFP is another thing that's very useful. Sunil, if you're back, please feel free to also chime in. And creation of RFP is another great area where the tool is very powerful. It ensures that based on the prompt, a good quality RFP is created, also compliant with your internal policies and procedures, which are also uploaded on the tool, and therefore compliance is ensured. Next slide, please. Contract drafting, query management, all of these Gen AI capabilities are sort of housed in a fairly secure environment, and we can keep moving on, please. We can also drive supplier query management. So when RFPs are sort of listed, suppliers can query the RFP and have their queries answered to the first level, and having the humans engage at the second level. Next slide, please. So what's most important here is when you think of Gen AI impact in your business, especially in procurement, we would say start with business outcomes to really have a bold vision. And I take you back to the slide Marcell shared a few minutes ago on the future of procurement and the concept of invisible teams, where AI pretty much is capable of drafting RFPs, comparing proposals, finding out new suppliers, price benchmarks, etc. So think about business outcomes to start with, have a bold vision. And then you go on to say, what's the sort of data set that is required internally and externally? And then begin the exploration of the tool and how your tech stack needs to change. And as you think about that, always keep in mind and think of the word bionic, which Marcell explained. Think of people managing the tools. So you do need to think of people and culture in addition to thinking about what tool you would procure. And as we go to the next slides, please. Yeah. Slide 28, please. And again, here, the way we look at AI is 70% of the effort is still change in way of working. So the business needs to adapt to the capabilities of AI, to the power of the data and the systems. And that is always the tougher part. And that's where, serious energy and effort needs to be invested. So it's much more than just the algorithm and the technology, which is, of course, at the core of it. But changing the way you do things is important for us to complete the change. And how long do these things typically take? If you go to the next slide, you will find that impact can be created in any kind of AI transformation very quickly. So we've seen cases where generative AI is very quickly deployed, and within a few weeks, you can actually figure out, how you can, get your first use cases up and running, and you can get the entire organization very excited about using this new tool. You can get suppliers excited, unleash a new level of energy for them to engage in this transformation as well. So very exciting space. If you have any questions, do hit us up, not just in the comment section, but you can also, of course, reach out to any of us. Let me just pause here. We already had a few questions on the AI topic. Question by Vishwaraj, which Sunil may want to take, is AI, as we discussed, can be used to optimize supply chains for sustainability, but we also discussed AI models like ChatGPT consuming significant energy. How can companies balance AI's benefit in reducing waste with its own environment impact, right? So how do you balance? It's a great question. Sunil, if you want to take a shot at that.
Sure. I think this is a great question. I think, so we are at a cusp of AI models getting more and more efficient with the passage of time. While the computation is, of course, consuming a lot of resources, we've seen the advent of newer models, which are consuming lesser and lesser resources as time passes. So we'll be moving towards an era where probably the amount of resources consumed by today's models will not be the same tomorrow. And that would also help us balance some of the resource consumption by using some of these models. DeepSeek is one clear example in that direction. And as more and more models get efficient, this is something that is clearly a direction and that we take. It is true with any technology. You'll see it in any technology globally in the past, and we've seen that happen multiple times. The initial cusp is always a little bit more expensive and a little bit more heavy on resources, but then efficiencies kick in.
Great. Thanks, Sunil. The next question from Habil. How mature are organizations when assessing shift to invisible procurement teams? What are the prerequisites? Great question. Sunil, if you want to take that, and the team, if we can pull up that slide that Marcell talked about on invisible procurement teams as Sunil talks through, please.
So yeah, while the slide is coming up, I think this is a great question because this is something that is playing on everyone's mind today. Organizations are at different levels of maturity today. It depends on where the procurement lies in the entire curve of maturity. Some of the prerequisites, if I have to think about from a maturity perspective, will depend on the role that procurement plays today. Is the role that if the team is playing is more transactional in nature, where of course it's playing part in the P2P cycle, while the S2C cycle is more is not currently completely mature. Then of course in that case the invisible procurement will not be there in the near future. As you climb the maturity cycle and you move towards from a transactional procurement operation, opportunity to becoming more strategic in nature, where you start thinking about strategic sourcing, category management, and then you start looking at automating some of this to generate insights and focus more on strategy and supplier relationship management. That is where the difference starts coming in. Will this happen in the next 5 years? May not be. It will take a little longer. Where we are today, we are seeing elements being shifted towards AI capabilities, elements being shifted to outsource. depending on how quickly the adoption happens, the invisible procurement team might be a little longer for procurement teams that are lower in maturity, but it might be about a few years down the line for some of the teams that have already adopted digital tools that help them harness the power of AI.
Great, amazing. Thank you so much for that point, and thank you, Ahmed, also for your comment. And we will continue this discussion on AI's role in reshaping procurement. As Sunil said, team maturity is one prerequisite, but also if you were to build a procurement team now without any historical baggage, you would think zero base, and you would probably think of a very thin team, because AI can do a lot of the category strategy work. It can drive a lot of the sourcing. RFPs can be created by AI, with humans just being the layer that sort of looks at fine-tuning the RFP. Where you do need humans, as Marcell was also saying initially, is for relationship management, for second-order problem solving. These are things which, as yet, AI can't replace. And with internal customers becoming more demanding, suppliers becoming more sophisticated, relationship management, both internally and externally from the procurement side, is extremely crucial. And that's not something to be sort of glossed over. And that's certainly an area where humans will continue to play a very important role. Great. And with that as context, and Wael has also talked about resilience, and we'll thank you, Wael, for giving us a segue, because the next section, the next 10 minutes, will be about resilience. And so if we pull up those slides, please, team, and I will talk you through the latest thinking on this very hot and emerging topic. Now, the key question that many heads of operation and heads of procurement are asked is, how do you really build resilience? Is it just a good afterthought after we've been hit by a surprise, or is there something that you can really do? And what our wonderful team at Transformation X did was to do a bit of research on how are large companies addressing this topic of resilience. So what you see in this slide, as complex as it may seem, is an extract from analyst calls in the last 6 months. And if you look at the slide, read from left to right, left is really questions, and the middle is also questions. The right is really how the heads of operation and supply chain have responded, right? So whether it's about strategic and competitive outlook and challenges, or internal adjustments in cost and pricing, you see CPOs talk of 4 key things to improve resilience. First is supplier diversification. That is still seen as a very trusted sort of lever in order to improve resilience. Second is dynamic pricing strategies, which of course is not just a sourcing topic, but it sort of spans the entire organization. So how does supply chain connect with the rest of the organization, drive dynamic pricing? Cost optimization is of course very important, evergreen. It's not a hottest topic in terms of the frequency of its mention in analyst calls as you look at it. Nearshoring and reshoring is another great topic, given all that's happening in the trade route volatility area. So with this as context, what we also did was, along with the support of great organizations like GPCA, the Gulf Petrochemical and Chemical Association, with whom we partnered for a resilience report, we asked 50 companies and leaders in their companies about what were the biggest risks that they see from a supply chain perspective. And this is recent data. And as you can see here, global war and the threat of it is really seen as a here and now risk that supply chain leaders are dealing with. So it's not something that's theoretical. It's something that is a high impact area which you really need to think about. Disruption of trade routes driven by war or otherwise is another very high impact topic which leaders in supply chain and operations are worried about. And then you look at all of the other topics in order of importance as perceived by the respondents. Global pandemic. Now there's a resurgence. There are many different names and cool viruses. There's a financial crisis that is still seen as a big risk. Demand downturn in a unique setting like the GCC is always seen as a big risk area. Supply dependence is another risk, and so on. So let's keep this in mind as we go through the next slides in terms of how you really then end up building resilience. So when we looked at the topic of resilience and did a lot of research on big companies, successful companies, and how they navigated, what we found was this gold mine of 18 different levers across 5 themes that companies use to build resilience. So the 5 themes are as follows, from sort of right to left. The first is supply chain visibility, if you look at the inner circle, right? And that's extremely important to build resilience. The second is operational flexibility, flexibility in supply chain, flexibility in operations, flexibility right up to your go-to-market strategies. The third big bucket is risk processes. So how do you embed risk processes in your day-to-day working? The fourth is collaboration. Collaboration both with suppliers, but most importantly, also with internal stakeholders. And the fifth, most important, is organization and people capability to sort of absorb all of this, react quickly when risk is unfolding. And across each of these 5, we have very specific action areas, which you can read from this slide, and also is being covered in greater detail, and it's also accessible in our latest report. So this is a gold mine. Think of it like a true playbook as you do a checking of whether your company does each of these. Next slide, please. And that's the next question we asked our leaders across GCC companies. And we asked them, which of these 18 levers do you really practice on a day-to-day basis? And we sort of gave a dark green color to the most popular lever, light green to the medium popular, and so on. And as you can see from this slide, supplier diversification, strong supplier relationships is still a very crucial element to improving the resilience of your supply chain. So if you have single source suppliers, then you need to rethink. If you have too many of those, or if you're running a process with multiple suppliers, but you end up buying from the same supplier more or less, that's also another situation where you need to rethink and work around. Having the right risk monitoring and assessment tools is important. If you stay on the previous slide, please. Digitalization tools, we talked about them. That's very important. Training and capability building, also incredibly important. So here is, again, pretty much from the horse's mouth, which are the most popular levers. Okay, as we go to the next slide, we look at how companies have done it. Most of you probably own an iPhone, right? I mean, if this were a real discussion, I would have asked for a show of hands, but I'm guessing there are quite a few in the audience who own an iPhone. Now, Apple sort of has been trying to diversify its supplier base over a period of time. Now, there are 2 important things in this slide that I'd like you to take away. First of all, even for a company as large and complex, they only have 320 suppliers driving most of their procurement. Now, in many of your companies, you probably have even more. So that's something to think about, to say, how do you really pick and choose, have a resilient supply chain while still having, a handful of suppliers, if you look at it. And second, they've really diversified, not just at a company level, but also at a country level. And today it's in such a way that a single model does not have a single point of failure. It has multiple, let's say, nodes and points of failures in order to ensure that whatever happens, you still get the next model of iPhone on the date that's promised. Let's go to the next slide. Apple, of course, is an international example. If you look at local examples in the Middle East, we have fabulous companies. Tasnia is one company. It's a listed company. I'd strongly encourage you to sort of learn more about them. Successful manufacturing company. What they do is they create a periodic, monthly, if I'm not wrong, and actually weekly supply chain newsletter that looks at the latest situation for each of their categories and for each of their suppliers. So the internal team works on it and then circulates it not just within procurement, but also within the rest of the organization. So the organization knows the pulse of key suppliers and the pulse of key markets. Well, let's go to the next slide, please. If you look at, again, some of the other companies on the shipping side, you have Vollmer. We unfortunately had a big Red Sea crisis that most of you would know of over the last several quarters, and it sort of went up and went down. But this is a company that was able to react very quickly. And when the entire Red Sea passage became fraught with risk, they were able to react quickly, create new routes pretty much in the matter of days. This included the relevant approvals, the relevant regulatory sort of filings, talking and engaging with customers, and moving their entire internal organization to be able to deliver against and for these new routes. So again, a great example of how company culture, business continuity planning, BCP, as you can read from this slide, and learnings from the past pandemic of COVID really helped them react very quickly. So flexibility was another topic we talked of, and this is a great example of that in action. If you go to the next slide, please. Bahri, it's a great shipping company based out of Saudi. What they do is they really do digital twinning. So for many of their vessels, they have numerous sensors that allow them to actually monitor the vessel from a distance. This ensures that preemptive maintenance is done, and it's not just a theoretical topic, and that the true health of the machines is sort of known well, and enough data is there to sort of analyze and prepare for. And again, as we move forward, the last question that we actually asked them, and I'm coming up to the last couple of slides in my section before we open it up to more questions. The question that we asked fellow leaders is, if resilience is so important for you, what's holding you back? And as you can see from this slide, the answers were quite surprising. They said there are two big things that hold us back. The first is the organization culture and the absence of change readiness. And the second is really organization and leadership, accountability, capability to drive this, right? So they say risk is a great topic on which people are trained. But when we sort of put it to the test, we find that the organization is not really fully ready to implement these processes. We also find that the leadership likes to talk about risk very often, but when it comes to truly investing, for example, in taking a second supplier where you have single source suppliers, even at a slightly lower cost, it's not that easy a decision to make. So while we all talk about risk and resilience, let's recognize that the day-to-day challenges in making this happen within the organization are still huge. One other slide that I'd like to leave you with as we bring this to a close is creating a risk library for yourself and for your company is a great best practice. If you don't have one, start creating one. This is what you see in this slide is a set of 100 risks that we updated over the last few months. So you could take this and build off of it as you create your own risk library. And as we move on, please. So as we bring it all together across the three topics that we talked about, which were the trends, AI, and resilience, before we open up to questions, three takeaways that I'd like you to think about. First, you need to factor increased volatility and risks. We are back in a phase where riskiness is high. We saw the volatility index sort of shooting up. We saw fiscal policy and trade policy risk shooting up, and that's a warning bell for all of you as CPOs. So really think risks first as you think of your category management. Second, as far as Gen AI, aim high. The sky is truly the limit. As long as you have a bit of an experimental approach to it, it truly is transformative. You can get a lot done with a very highly capable team. And last but not the least, building supply chain resilience may cost a little bit more, but it's really one of those investments that pays very rich dividends over a period of time. With that, I'll pause the formal presentation. We have a ton of questions that you will see on the screen one by one. Great, Abhishek. Thanks for joining. You're a great procurement leader yourself in the shipping space, and thank you for your time. You ask, most companies use their own ERP. Is this solution, I assume you're talking about the Procure Copilot, integrated with the existing ERP, and is it customizable? Great question. So it's absolutely customizable. For now, it can be used as a point solution, which is completely standalone, because it's much more on the sourcing realm rather than on the day-to-day procurement. So the frequent interaction with your ERP is not really required. You may want to upload a spend analysis data, which you can download from the ERP and sort of upload. You will, of course, need to upload a few RFPs, but that does not require ERP integration. So the short answer is it works very well without full integration with ERP, but if required to integrate, that can also be done quite easily. I hope that answers your question, and very happy to discuss further, offline as well. Great. Can we have the next question, please? So while you had a question earlier, maybe we can pull that question up as the team is pulling up. I'll read it in the private chat as we're bringing it up. You've asked, how can businesses, now we have it, how can businesses build a resilient procurement strategy to mitigate geopolitical risk while maintaining cost efficiency and supplier reliability? And that is an incredible question. Again, if you don't have a business continuity planning process, that's a great thing to have, because what a BCP does is it recognizes organizations' risks comprehensively. That's one. Second, we talked about the 18 levers, and we may want to bring that slide up, team, to answer this question. It's a useful health check that you may want to do yourself. You may want to literally look at those 18 levers across those five different sub-themes that are actually there. And you could ask yourself, am I doing this already? And if I may take a minute there on supply chain visibility, the first question is, do you have end-to-end visibility of your supply chain? Do you know at a fair level of detail the orders placed and where the different shipments are, how much you have in inventory, how much is in transit, how much is in the supplier's inventory, as an example? And if the answer to that is no, then that's probably an area to work on. Predictive analytics capabilities is something that is great to have. So do you have a what-if scenario working in your existing supply chain? It may not be in your ERP, but are you able to sort of extract the data and do this offline, for instance? Is your IT system integrated? Very often, even in large companies, the source-to-pay system sometimes stands separate from the ERP. And this is a challenge. So looking at how you drive integration is a great way to do it. So I would, while if you ask me, look at these list of 18 levers and ask yourself within your team, which one of these are you doing very well or not at all? And that's a great place to start. As we are waiting for more questions, Marcell, one of the questions that we constantly keep getting asked is there a future where AI will completely replace procurement teams? And you've been a former CPO and the head of digitalization. Over to you.
Arun, great question. And I think I fully understand, first of all, the concerns about that lots of jobs are getting impacted and also changed. On the other side, when we look on how important the strategic value generating task in procurement become and what the impact is, and when we look on the other side, how important the supplier, the relationship management, also within an organization, so stakeholder management in a broader sense is, this will be still a very personal topic where we need a lot of people in procurement, defining strategies, interacting with suppliers, coming up with innovations, and really managing the entire source to pay from the strategic side, from the categories. AI might not tell what exactly you need and have to buy. And therefore, I think it will be more the augmentation of AI capabilities with us as humans, but not a replacement. Will the role change? Yes, it will. But it will basically help also to get rid of operational tactical tasks. Pretty sure that no one wants really to process P2P orders, invoices, things like that. This is where AI definitely can help us. And in the near future, I think there's no risk, no reason for concerns, but lots of opportunities that our work will be more interesting and also more impactful on the value generating side, what we can do in procurement. Great question. Thank you.
It's another great question from the audience that's watching. Now, organization culture and changing the organization culture is not very easy, and as we all know, and it's a complex topic. So let me start, and Marcell and Sunil, add on, please. Now, if you look at organizational transformations, the ones that have successfully changed culture have had a burning platform to start with. So if there is a burning platform, either a great risk and a great threat that could befall the company if change doesn't happen, or the company being on the cusp of a great opportunity, then that's a fabulous position with which to galvanize the entire organization. So changing the culture needs to start with a burning platform, one way or the other. And that's what very successful transformations have always had to begin with. So that's one critical ingredient. The second critical ingredient is leadership behavior. You don't change culture by preaching. You change culture by role modeling. So the CEO and the CPO need to adopt AI in this situation. They need to be comfortable with some of the errors that early stage AI can tend to make in order to nurture and develop it. They need to encourage new talents, experimentation in using these tools. So these are, in my mind, a couple of things to keep in mind to drive culture change. Marcell, Sunil, what do you think? Marcell, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry. No, I think great answer. And I think overall, it is very important also to define which culture do you really want to have in your organizations. This is a leadership story, and it always starts with the vision. Where are you today? Where do you want to go? And how to get there. To ensure that you bring your team behind you, because this is absolutely key, that you have trust in your organization, that you communicate openly, and also that you really assess together what is it exactly what we have right now, and where do we want to go, and how can we make it happen with all of us together. And of course, a strong leadership is needed here. To navigate through the ocean and the challenges what we face, but let's turn it around and let's make challenges to opportunities by that.
No, great point. I think, Arun and Marcel, I think one more point I'd like to add is a cultural or an org change or a behavior change is not something that happens overnight. It is also something that has to be pragmatically thought of. It is the smaller things that matter. If you do the same thing every day for a month, for a year, it brings a change in the organization. So while the leadership is looking at how do we bring this change, it is also important to understand what are the smaller activities that we need to do on a daily basis. How do we do it differently? And how does that bring about a behavioral change or a cultural change in the organization? If data-driven decisions is something you want to drive as a cultural change, but you're not leveraging data for day-to-day decisions, the change is going to be more difficult to implement. But if in everyday conversations, whether it's from a manager level or a GM level or a director, asking questions to the team, if a data-driven decision is being taken at every level on a daily basis, that cultural change becomes easier to make. So it's also about thinking about what are the smaller changes I need to make in the ways of working that can actually drive a cultural organization change over the long run. So let me take this. I think this is a great question, Bhargav. Yes, of course. There are more than enough tools today that you can start off with initially, at least to leverage the power of AI and Gen AI in procurement. They don't need investments. As simple as ChatGPT, if you start off even with that, you can use that as an inspiration. You can use that for initial searches, whether it is the name of different suppliers, the price benchmarks, market research, so on and so forth. The reason why I said use it as an inspiration and not a source of truth is because we all know Gen AI tools do have the fear of hallucination. Not the data is not always 100% accurate, but whether you use that or Gemini or any of the other tools, these are great starting points. It will help you release a lot of time immediately. You'll see the benefit immediately. And what I spoke about are the more widely known tools. There are other tools that help you generate content, that help you generate data analytics. You can upload some data and it can throw up analytics for you. There are more than enough tools that are freely available out in the world that you can start getting your hands dirty on. As you see the benefit, as you see it actually bringing strategic dividends for the firm, then you can start thinking on where do I need to start making investments? Does the data make sense right now for me to start investing in a tool? But initially, even my suggestion would be, as an SME, definitely get your hands dirty on some of the free tools. It's very easy to start off with.
And once you get your hands dirty, do try our Transformation X Procure Copilot. It's a great tool, and it works for small and medium enterprises and large ones alike. Great. And we have a great question from Bail as well. While organizations have implemented various strategies for managing direct spend, effective indirect spend is crucial as it plays a pivotal role. How can tech and data help organizations gain visibility and control over indirect spend? Fabulous question. Sunil, you want to take that? Then I can add on.
No, sure. So this is This is actually one of the pivotal questions in procurement, where the focus is always on direct spends. Indirect spends usually are something that crop up or are talked about when it becomes more important. Now, what it does is, how can technology data analytics help? Is data analytics is actually able to bring to fore a lot of the data that is hidden and escapes the eyes of some of the leaders, or escapes the eyes of the buyers. We call it tail spend. We call it at times, it's also called as hidden data or the long tail. What usually happens is data analytics can throw up saying, these are your top spends, these are your categories, direct and indirect, and it can bring to fore saying, this is where you need to focus on. And we have seen GenAI tools and analytical tools that actually prompt the buyer, prompt the leadership, saying, for this year, this is your top spend, and this is where we see changes happening in the market based on external data. So we see changes happening in some of the indirect category spends, and that comes as a prompt to saying, do you want to relook at your spend in these categories? So while direct spend is something that everyone's focusing on, there are enough tools that are prompting people to have a look at indirect spend, and there are enough tools that are actually doing the data analytics part to help you analyze your indirect spend better.
And to add on, while this is actually where technology can help, it much more in indirect spend than in direct. So creating a simple spend cube is a great way to start, right? And when you do that, you will find that your indirect spend has a lot of duplication. Supplier names are sort of multiple entries and so on and so forth. You use data to clean that up. And what you will find is, in indirect spend, the opportunity to save percentage cost is actually much higher, because historically, most of the focus has been on direct spend being the larger categories, and indirects in many organizations tend to be sort of seen at a second priority, and said, okay, as long as we get the value and the furniture is delivered or the pantry supplies are delivered, we're okay. But really, that is where you get a lot of percentage savings possibilities. And so using data to create spend transparency, looking at price anomalies, multiple suppliers for the same subcategories, these are all great opportunities, right? And spend transparency is step one. Many tools can do it, and we can do it. Our tool can do it quite easily. Would strongly recommend that this is a great first step. Amazing. So we're coming to a close, and thank you all for your time and patience. So I will request each of my fellow speakers to end with a couple of sharp statements, and over to you, Marcell, and then Sunil.
Yeah, very happy. And I think I mentioned it, let's turn challenges into opportunities, and we need to stay on top. And the impact of procurement and the future of procurement is definitely exciting by combining the technology, what we have access to, and also using the insights and data as well as what's happening around the world to really define the right strategies, but also execute on them. Thank you very much. It was really great, and I hope it was insightful for you. Sunil, over to you.
Thank you, Marcell. I think adding to what Marcell just said, harnessing Gen AI is a great way of extracting value through procurement. Look at it as a strategic tool, a strategic means, and in no ways is this going to take away what you're already doing. At the heart of it, we still need people to make the strategic calls, to build relationships with our suppliers, and to extract value. But Gen AI is a great way to actually extract strategic value for the organization. We need to harness it much better. It was great talking to you all, and I hope this was insightful for everyone.
Thank you, Sunil. We live in riskier times than ever. So when you drive your procurement and category strategies, do pay attention to riskiness and try actively to de-risk every category that you're actually sourcing. Thank you once again, Dr. Marcell. Thank you, Sunil. And thank you, wonderful audience, for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the last 62 minutes, and we wish you a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.